the year and the 5 years. And in the last 10 to 14 days, I guess, came to some conclusions, and that's Dan Flynn, our CEO, and I, for the most part. Dan is here. So, quite recently, I don't think I'm going to get into details of the meeting with Bob. These are always difficult situations. Bob's done a very good job with the national team, and has been a good friend long before he was the national team coach and I was U.S. Soccer president. So those moments are difficult, and I think that's all I'm going to say about our meeting. With regards to Jürgen, obviously it's a great thing that to have someone who's been there, who's been on the winners' stand at the World Cup, at the European Championship. That's a unique situation. He's had a bronze medal as a coach at the World Cup. So for us, that's a fantastic situation. That who's played at the very highest level, coached at the very highest level with Bayern and with Germany, but to have actually tasted the success of winning a World Cup, we think was a plus for sure.
Sunil, Frank GS, North Star Ledger, here.
Yep.
Are you under the belief that a coach in a second World Cup cycle doesn't have the same response from the players? And if that's true, having said that, it might take him 3 years just to get the program he wants in order and another cycle to get the players he wants in order. Are you comfortable with a 7-year commitment, and what is the length of the contract?
So the second cycle issue is always an awkward question because most coaches that aren't very successful it's defined at some level for their own circumstances in their own country don't get that opportunity, and those that do have generally done well in the first cycle. So to improve on a good performance is never easy. So, I mean, on statistical grounds, there's not many of them, and it's not easy to measure. The commitment we've made for now is through the World Cup. So it's not a 7-year commitment, and we'll look at that along the way. There are, in the case of Europe, there are 4- and 6-year commitments quite often around a European championship. The Gold Cup has become increasingly more important for us when it leads to the Confederations Cup and as a competition in itself. So, we're worrying about the next 3 years, the next 9 days with a game right off the bat, and we'll see how it goes over that period of time. I think obviously in the case of Germany, Jürgen was able to get comfortable relatively quickly, not in 7 days, to get that team ready, and we'll look forward to that over the next 3 years.
Matt Futterman from the Wall Street Journal. Is there really an American approach to this game? You talk about this gulf between I'm not the European guy, or is there just good soccer?
I deeply believe that soccer in a certain way reflects the culture of a country. And so, having studied the U.S. culture over the last 13 years, it's quite a challenge because you have such a melting pot in this country that so many different opinions and ideas floating around there. I mean, every coach obviously has his own ideas, then you have kind of the whole challenge of youth soccer in this country being based in a very different model than anywhere else in the world. Your educational system is completely different than the rest of the world. So one of my challenges will be, to find a way to define, how, a U.S. team should represent its country. What should be the style of play? Is it more a proactive and aggressive kind of forward-thinking style of play, or is it more a reacting style of play? Because that comes with, obviously, with the players that you have at your disposal, but also with the people that you're surrounded with, and the people that have an opinion in this country, like the media, like coaches, and there's such a wealth of knowledge in this country. It's in Europe or in South America, it's unheard of, because most of, the college coaches, have a 4-year education as well. I mean, traditionally in Europe, it works like you become a pro at the age of 18, so you never get to college. So I think it is important that over the next 3 years, or especially in the beginning, then that I have a lot of conversations with people involved in the game here to find a way to define that style. What suits us best? What would you like to see? What would you like to identify with? I think a great example is certainly the women's team, how they played their World Cup final. I think this is how America wanted to see their girls play that game, and they did an awesome job. So it will be one of our main topics always, sitting down and discuss that. But it should reflect your mentality and your culture. And I mean, if you talk about Brazil, you know how Brazil plays. It's just, you know about Argentina, you know about Italy. They sit back and they wait for one mistake you're going to do and they kill you. And we defined that with Germany in 2004, which was a very, very difficult process, but we worked through that process, and now, it's settled, that style of play. So, I mean, your opinion is important. Coaches, college coaches' opinions are important. Youth coaches' opinions. I mean, everyone is involved in that process. Players as well. So, I'm looking forward to a lot of talks.
Yeah, it's just had to add, and this is, I think, probably prior to us having any discussions about coaching the team after the World Cup in Germany, and Jürgen outlined what he had done when he had first gone to Germany on that issue of style and why that German team felt, played, and looked different than previous teams. And it's exactly what he just outlined, which we were fascinated with, that he had essentially had a series of conversations, and in some sense with the country, but with players, with coaches, with media, about what they expected, what they wanted German soccer to represent at the international level. And frankly, given the diversity of this country, that sort of dialogue here, I think is exciting.
We'll go in the middle here.
Jürgen, Alex Labadie from Goal.com. I have 2 questions. Have you had a chance to speak with any of the players on the team? And are you looking at your staff moving forward before Mexico?
I spoke to about 5-6 players over the weekend. Obviously, we were extremely busy to get this whole thing organized, and get officially, basically, ready to work and move forward towards the Mexico game. So I spoke to 5-6 players. I will call the whole rest tomorrow. I mean, I pretty much have a picture where they're at right now with their club teams, especially if you look at the overseas players, their personal situations. Some without a club actually right now. So it's not going to be easy to really form a highly competitive team for next week, but we will get it off the ground. That being said, about the staff, building a staff, me and Sunil and Dan, we had a good talk about that too. I would like to approach it the way that I will work from game to game, probably with different people. I won't confirm a full-time staff, over the next couple of months, because I want to see what's out there. There are a lot of good, highly qualified coaches in the U.S. that I might not know. So I need to talk to people. I need to understand, what's out there. And we'll talk to a lot of MLS coaches, obviously, and get their perspective, and see, who can I invite, as guest coaches, guest assistant coaches, basically, So I won't come in and say, this is my staff. It was a different situation 7 years ago with Germany because of, the media pressure and the speculations. You needed to calm down that right away. I think here, because not jumping into qualifying right away, we have that opportunity. We have exhibition games now. So I can try out also different coaches on my side to see, how they're doing. I had a great conversation with Claudio Reyna. I want Claudio very close to me in terms of helping him in his new role as a technical director for youth development at the federation. So he will be always part of the staff. He will sit with us coaches on the table, so I can tell him, how I look at the game and how we kind of be of help to him. I spoke to Tab Ramos, who's right now the under-20 coach for right now. I want his perspective. I want his information about what's coming through at the under-20 and under-17 level. Even if I saw some of the games already, I kind of know already most of the players from watching them. But I will take my time. I will take my time. So hopefully by Wednesday, we can announce the roster for the Mexico game, so give you a clear picture who's on that roster for 20 players, around 20 players, and also announce then, who will be my assistants on the training field and on the bench then basically. But it won't be a coaching staff that will be confirmed for the next 3 years to go. We take our time. I want to make sure that I get to know a lot of different people, different approaches, because covering this country here is just a different challenge than a small country like Germany.
We'll go to the right over here.
Hi, Jürgen. Congratulations. Greg Lawless from MLSsoccer.com. Here in the United States, we have a lot of conversations about foreign coaches versus domestic coaches. What are your thoughts on that whole topic and whether it's important to have a domestic or a foreign coach?
Well, it is. I mean, there are pros and cons, obviously. I think foreign coaches can bring a lot to the table because of their experience to certain high intense environments. If you coach a national team in South America or Europe, or a club team, you're in a daily grind. I mean, this is really something that you have to deal daily with this amount of journalists, then instead of once in a while. And you have a different perspective on the game. You are used to work in a different environment. But I think it is important to understand the specifics of U.S. soccer. I think it's important to understand your culture, how you grow up and where your emotions, where are your priorities. It took me years to understand, how important this whole educational path for people is in this country. I never got it. The first couple of years I said, well, why is the program really not that important to people? Why is it always about where are you going to college? What's the high school? Where are your kids going to school? I always respond, my kids going to school, the next closest school. What's the big deal? But over years then I started to understand, okay, those are the reasons why you think that way, and that's because it's just a completely different setup. So it is important that I know all those things, and it's important when a foreign coach comes in that he gets also the time to understand all those mechanisms. Now, you always have to kind of consider then different people in different roles. One thing is to coach the U.S. team in here and develop players in this country, for their future time. The other thing is you maybe have to prepare them for a World Cup in Brazil or a World Cup in wherever in Europe. Suddenly totally other circumstances come in there where maybe, a U.S. coach in that moment is very comfortable in whatever happens in this country, but suddenly is out of his comfort zone when he's in Brazil and deals with different nations and different style of plays and different issues there. So that is one of the kind of fascinating topics we will have over the next months and years. Is what people can we work with also on a global base. It doesn't mean that you maybe bring in an assistant coach from Europe just to have an assistant coach from Europe, but maybe you have some people in Europe that actually help to work with the U.S. Soccer Federation, and they live in Europe. You have the case that probably 2/3 of your squad of the best 20 players are in Europe. So maybe a thought is, should we have somebody in Europe to oversee those players so I don't need to fly back and forth every weekend? So I will build with Sunil together and Dan together, we will build a network of people that help U.S. soccer to move forward, and quietly. It doesn't need to be on the media surface, but it's amazing to talk to, foreign coaches about what happened here in the U.S. If you talk to coaches, a good friend of mine is Berti Vogtsov is in Germany, or Menotti in Argentina, or Pereira in Brazil. When I talk to these coaches, they admire what happened here the last 20 years. Carlos Alberto, he was here for a year, he experienced MLS himself, which was a huge challenge for him because he didn't know how things work. Suddenly there was a draft, and he said, what is that? It's a draft, we don't have that in Europe and South America. So, but to learn from those coaches, maybe for your own program, is also very important, I think, and I will build that. I have most of the relationships already. I will build further relationships with coaches abroad and then see what is best then for U.S. soccer.
We'll have 2 questions in the front, and then we'll go in the back here.
Hi, Jürgen. Tim Leonard from the Bergen Record. Congratulations on the job. The one thing I wanted to ask you about the youth programs, and you talked about that a little bit before, would you like to see a uniform style of play for the youth systems here? And what sort of changes would you like to see in the youth system here? And was that at any point